Sorry not being able to be with you. Thank you for your invitation. Now that I can come to the States, this invitation was we got this invitation before me being able to come to the State. And then from where I am, I had other commitments here in Montreal where I'm stuck because, as you know, it's impossible to go back to Europe these days. So this is where I am, and this is where I'm staying. So thank you for your invitation, and let me go straight to some of the main points of our discussion about salvation in Islam, because this is a very important topic and with many and multiple dimensions in the way we have to tackle the issue. So as an introduction, three main points. The first one is when we speak about salvation in Islam and the very meaning of what it means to be with God and to try to connect with the very essence of our religion, and in which we think about being saved and being close to the Creator from within a religious tradition. In fact, we are talking about something which is very important, which is the concept of human being. Very often we go straight to the discussion about salvation, about sometimes paradise and hell, about what is wrong and what is right, about morality, about rules, but we forget to speak about the very essence of this concept of human being, because in all philosophies and in all religions, in Judaism, Christianity and Islam, the monotheistic traditions, but also when it comes to spiritualities and Buddhism and Hinduism, it's quite important to come to the very concept of human being, because this is where we understand how our religious tradition is dealing with this concept of human beings, this conception of human beings, and in which way the human beings are asked to act and to behave in order to get this salvation and to be close to God. So this is the first important point for us. The second thing which is important with the concept of human beings, it's really to be also able to come to what we are trying to achieve. So it's not only about the being, it's about the behavior, because salvation has to do with the way you have to behave in order to be loved by God, which is the highest level in the Islamic tradition, which is forgiven, which is also something which has to do with the reality of the religious tradition, and to be one of this faithful to the religious tradition. So here it's something which has to do with a way of being and with God, and a way of being with your own self. So it's first the concept of human being, which is the first point that we can get in the whole the Islamic traditions and Islamic sciences, what we call Islamic sciences in the mainstream classical tradition. And the second thing is, okay, having said this, how do we behave and in which way we have to deal with our own self, because this is the very starting point of anything which has to do with the spiritual lessons and the spiritual tradition, is the way you are with your own self, the way you behave and the way you deal with the surrounding world. And the last point which is important when it comes to talking about salvation is really something which is important, is in fact what am I looking for? What is the very essence of this quest? When, you know, the quest for meaning in Islam, as in other religious traditions, is in fact the answer is God. There is one God, and this is the answer to the quest for meaning. But while we have this response to the very essential question, there is something which is, so having said that there is one God, which is the centrality of Tawheed, the oneness of God in Islam, what we are talking about here is something which has to do with, okay, having said this, what am I looking for with or through this relationship with the one God, with Allah? And Allah is the Arabic word to say for saying God, and I think that it's also something that we have to repeat in our discussion when it comes to this understanding that we are talking about the same one God in all the monotheistic tradition. And then what am I looking for in this relationship? What do I want to achieve? So through my being, through my behavior, and in this relationship with God, what it is said in my religious tradition, and this is where we as a Muslim have to deal with this concept of salvation. And the second question, which is following the first one, what am I looking for, is what can I hope? What is the very essence? Because salvation, in the perception that there is a relationship with God, that He's expecting something from me, which is exactly what we have with the age of reason in Islam, you become mukallaf. Mukallaf means God is expecting something from you. You have to behave in a certain way to be saved, to be close to Him. And there are levels, there are steps that you have to go through and rules that you have to respect. So with this, what can I hope, which is also something which is important. Not only what can I hope as for the relationship I have with myself, but the relationship that I have with God, and then with beyond this life, what is my perception of the hereafter. So we understand that when we come to the concept of salvation in any religious tradition, it's very deep, it's multi-dimensional, and we have really to understand the complexity and to come back to the scriptural sources, and then to understand what is said in the Quran, what is said in the Islamic tradition, and we extract from the scriptural sources a kind of a philosophy with ends, with framework, outlines, and then with a process where we understand that what is expected from us. It's from within a religious tradition, a philosophy of life. And then with its ends, with its requirements and conditions and practices, worship, and also a relationship to your own heart and your own fellow human beings. And then, of course, all this in the light of your relationship with God. And I don't want just to minimize this dimension, because very often, once again, we go straight to some of the rules, forgetting the essence of the whole discussion. And the essence is there is no way to speak about salvation without coming from what is the spiritual teaching from within the religious tradition. It has to do with a spiritual understanding, intellectually, but also from the very essence of the relationship that we have with our heart. In one book, starting now with this first part, what is the Islamic concept of human being? Which is, for me, coming, I have studied the Western philosophy and also being involved in interfaith dialogue. I very much think that it's the missing link in our dialogue. And that we tend to think that we all have the same concept of human being, or the way we look at our soul, our body, and our heart. And in fact, there is something which is quite specific, which is not shared in a so easy way by all the traditions, be it the Christian tradition, the Greek tradition, for example, when it comes to philosophy, the Christian tradition or the Jewish tradition. The monotheistic traditions do not have exactly the same understanding of what is a human being and how do we qualify, morally speaking, a human being, or what is the dimensions, or what constitute a human being. So let me come to this. In one book called Western Muslims and the Future of Islam, at the beginning of the book, while I was talking about us being Western Muslims, I said that the very beginning for us is really to come to a very deep understanding of this the Islamic concept of human being, because in our dialogue and our mutual understanding, it's quite important to come to this. So there is here something which is very important. Yes, we have in the Islamic tradition elements that constitute a human being. We are talking, and we come to in nafs, for example. Very often we speak about a nafs as the person. It's the concept of who the person, or sometimes the translation of a nafs is the soul, and sometimes the translation of a nafs, which is constituting a human being, is the body, or even sometimes the intellect. In fact, we have to be very precise here, because in our translation of some of the Arabic concepts, we are quite very often